Imagine raising $110 billion and then actually refusing to take a large chunk of it in cash.
Yeah, it sounds completely backward, doesn't it?
It really does. But, I mean, we are looking at a technology landscape right now where the U.S. dollar is, it's starting to take a back seat to a brand new global currency. Yeah. And that currency is compute.
Exactly.
And if you're listening to this, you already know that keeping up with artificial intelligence feels like trying to drink from a fire hose while you're riding a bullet train.
That is a very accurate description.
Right. So you don't need another summary of just basic headlines. You need to understand the underlying tectonic plates that are shifting beneath those headlines. Mm-hmm. So today we are jumping straight into the mechanics of what is actually happening.
And we really have the perfect roadmap for this today.
Yeah, we do.
We are dissecting an incredibly dense, highly revealing tech digest from Tech Talks with Kinsoft, and this is dated March 2nd, 2026. Our mission for this deep dive is to untangle this wild paradox playing out right in front of us. We're going to explore how unprecedented, just astronomical financial investments in AI are directly triggering these complex geopolitical standoffs.
Which is wild on its own.
Right. But how, simultaneously, those very same advanced technologies are actively arming everyday cybercriminals, to scale up these terrifyingly mundane threats.
Okay, let's unpack this. Yeah. Because we have to start with the sheer scale of the money.
The money is just staggering.
It really is. The Kinsoft Digest, it leads with a financial reality that, frankly, it breaks traditional economic models. They report that Nvidia posted a record quarter of around $68 billion.
Yeah, $68 billion.
Just to be clear, that is a single quarter, up over 70%. And driven almost entirely by data center chips for AI.
Which is massive.
But right on the heels of that, we get the real shocker. OpenAI closed a massive $110 billion funding round, and that was led by Amazon, Nvidia, and SoftBank. But the detail that, really demands attention is that much of Nvidia's share in that OpenAI funding didn't come as a wire transfer of cash. It came as compute.
Which is a fundamental restructuring of how tech equity works. What's fascinating here is that the processing power itself, like the raw capability to train these massive models, has completely bypassed traditional currency.
It's crazy to think about.
It is. It's now the primary medium of exchange. Because, think about it. If you are OpenAI, $1 billion in cash is nice.
Sure.
But you're just going to take that cash, go to a vendor, and buy processing power anyway.
Right. You're going to buy the chip.
Exactly. So Nvidia is essentially cutting out the middleman here. They're taking equity in exchange for dedicated server racks, processing time, and, silicon access.
Okay, wait, I have to push back here for a second because this does sound familiar to me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you're saying compute is this revolutionary new currency. But, tech companies have always traded in hardware and server space.
That's true.
So it's kind of like, okay, think of it like a lumber company, right? Sure. A lumber company funding a massive housing development, not by writing a check to the developer, but by simply providing all the wood they could ever possibly need.
Right, I see where you're going with this.
So how is Nvidia doing this today fundamentally any different from, say, IBM in the 1990s, providing mainframes to enterprise startups at a discount in exchange for equity?
It's a really fair question. But the difference lies in the nature of the asset itself and the macroeconomics at play.
Okay, how so?
When IBM provided a mainframe, they were providing a tool to run a business. A very expensive tool, but still just a tool.
Right.
In the AI ecosystem, compute isn't just a tool. It is the raw, consumable commodity that's actually required to synthesize the intelligence itself.
Ah, I see.
The much better way to understand this is to look at the early days of the petrodollar.
Wait, the petrodollar, as in oil?
Exactly. Think about how the global economy shifted when oil became the undeniable bedrock resource required for industrialization.
Oh, wow.
Right. Control over the raw energy supply dictated international trade agreements. It dictated equity and national security. Compute is essentially the new oil.
That's a huge comparison.
But it fits perfectly. Nvidia isn't just handing over hardware. They're allocating access to a scarce, globally demanded resource that operates as the foundational energy of the entire AI economy.
So they're locking them in.
Yes. When a company invests compute, they are locking the recipient into a highly specific architectural ecosystem. On a balance sheet, it allows Nvidia to secure equity in the very companies that will drive their future chip demand, and they do it without depleting their cash reserves.
Oh, man. So it's a closed-loop economic engine.
Exactly.
So it essentially guarantees that NVIDIA's technology is the inescapable foundation of OpenAI's future developments. You're tying the most advanced AI company in the world directly to your specific hardware architecture.
And that level of capital investment, and it leads us to a fascinating transition.
Yeah, because when you're throwing around numbers like $110 billion and you're dealing in entire alternative currencies based on processing power, you aren't just a nimble tech startup operating in a vacuum anymore, are you?
Not at all. And this is where the causality becomes totally undeniable.
Yeah.
When a technology requires the gross domestic product of a small country just to build its physical infrastructure, it crosses an invisible threshold.
It really does.
It stops being just a commercial software product. It becomes foundational global infrastructure. These companies begin to operate with the weight and influence of nation-states.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And when you possess nation-state levels of power and you control a resource that rivals oil, you inevitably crash headfirst into government intervention. I mean, you cannot amass $110 billion in strategic infrastructure without the federal government taking a very close, very critical look at how you operate.
Which brings us directly to the second major revelation in this March 2026 Kinsoft Digest. And I want to frame this carefully because it is a stark operational shift.
It really is.
According to the Digest, the Trump administration took a very aggressive regulatory stance regarding a major AI company called Anthropic. The administration officially blacklisted Anthropic, ordering federal agencies to immediately stop using their technology.
And the terminology they use there is critical.
Yeah.
They didn't just cancel the contract. They applied a highly consequential label to the company. The government officially labeled Anthropic a supply chain risk.
Right. And the source material explains the catalyst for this action. This blacklisting occurred after Anthropic refused to drop its internal corporate limits on two specific use cases,
Which were?
autonomous weapons and mass surveillance applications of its AI.
Right.
Now, as we explore this, it is absolutely crucial for you, the listener, to know that we are looking at this strictly from a market reality perspective.
Yeah.
We are not here to debate the politics of the administration's mandate, and we are not here to weigh in on the moral philosophy of Anthropic's internal ethics committee. Our focus is entirely on the shockwaves this event sends through the business world, because those shockwaves are massive.
Precisely. Because regardless of where anyone stands on the political or ethical spectrum of that specific standoff, the operational reality for the market shifted practically overnight.
Yeah, no kidding.
The Digest highlights a profound new reality. How an AI vendor navigates government pressure and internal ethics is no longer an abstract philosophical debate.
Right.
It is an immediate practical business liability for any customer relying on their technology.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because this completely rewrites the textbook on what a supply chain risk actually means.
It does.
If you are a chief operating officer and you hear supply chain risk, you traditionally think of physical, logistical bottlenecks.
Right, like a cargo ship.
Yeah. You think of a cargo ship stuck sideways in the Suez Canal, or a global shortage of semiconductor manufacturing, or, a factory shutting down because of a hurricane.
Exactly.
You understand how to model and mitigate physical delays. But this is entirely different. If a software company's internal, philosophical, ethical guidelines can trigger a sudden federal blacklist, doesn't that mean your entire software stack is vulnerable to a new kind of sudden death?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it validates exactly what you were asking. The definition of a supply chain has evolved entirely.
It really has.
In the digital age, your supply chain is the software you rent, it's the cloud compute you rely on, and the AI models you integrate into your daily operations.
Yeah.
What we are seeing in this snapshot is the realization that ideological and ethical friction is now a tangible, immediate liability.
Let me put you in the shoes of a business leader, then.
Okay.
If I'm a logistics CEO, say, running a massive supply chain network moving freight across North America, how am I supposed to underwrite the risk of my software vendor's internal ethics committee?
That is the big question.
Right. Because I chose a vendor to optimize my shipping routes. I spent millions integrating their API into my dispatch systems. I have absolutely nothing to do with autonomous weapons or federal surveillance.
Obviously not.
But suddenly, because of a geopolitical standoff over those issues, my vendor is blacklisted. Is it even possible to ensure against that kind of risk?
That is the multi-million-dollar question that's keeping chief risk officers awake at night right now.
I bet.
Traditionally, you insure against a data breach or a server outage. Insuring against regulatory sudden death caused by a vendor's moral stance is completely uncharted territory.
Unbelievable.
If your logistics business handles any federal subcontracts or interacts with federal data systems, which almost all major logistics firms do, you might suddenly be forced to rip out your entire AI infrastructure overnight just to remain compliant.
Why?
You are completely caught in the crossfire.
So you have to audit not just the technical capability and security of your vendors, but their political positioning, their lobbying efforts, and their ethical red lines.
Yep.
You are essentially betting on the geopolitical diplomacy skills of your software provider just to ensure your own shipping software keeps running.
Exactly. You are no longer just buying a product, you are adopting their geopolitical footprint.
That is wild.
But, as massive as these top-tier nation-state level standoffs are, the Kinsoft Digest doesn't let us stay in the stratosphere.
Right. It brings us back down.
It forces us to look at how this immense technological capability bleeds down into the gritty, ground-level reality of day-to-day operations.
Yeah.
Because while governments and tech titans are fighting over billion-dollar compute allocations and ethical frameworks, the exact same AI technology is actively being weaponized in the trenches.
Which brings us to the cybersecurity desk portion of the digest, and frankly, this is where the operational reality gets incredibly chilling.
It really does.
Let's lay out the facts reported for that single week in March. First, a Russian-speaking threat actor was caught using generative AI to compromise hundreds of Fortinet firewalls globally. Just to quickly define that for context, Fortinet firewalls are essentially the digital bouncers standing between a company's internal corporate network and the open public internet.
Good analogy.
Thanks. And the attackers got in through weak management interfaces, which is basically like leaving the bouncer's own internal rulebook and master keys sitting on a table out in the open.
It is a devastating oversight, but unfortunately a really common one. And the report continues from there.
Right. So on top of the Fortinet breaches, researchers discovered AI-generated code actively being used to help orchestrate a cyber attack on Mexican government systems. And to cap it all off, a known hacker crew called ShinyHunters struck again. They hit a major car marketplace called CarGurus, exposing over 12 million users.
Jeez.
And they simultaneously stole employee data from a massive entity like Wynn Resorts. It is just a relentless drumbeat of breaches across wildly different sectors.
It is relentless, but the crucial insight from the Kinsoft report isn't merely that hacks are happening. As you know, hacks always happen. That isn't news. The critical insight is the mechanism of how AI is fundamentally changing the nature of these attacks.
Okay.
The digest makes a very specific point. Attackers are now using AI to scale up the boring, effective stuff.
So what does this all mean? Because I think when a lot of us hear about AI and cybersecurity, our minds immediately go to Hollywood tropes.
Oh, absolutely.
We picture a hyper-intelligent, autonomous program actively fighting our security software in a digital war room. We imagine hackers deploying some incredibly complex, never-before-seen zero-day virus.
Right.
A vulnerability no one even knew existed that just effortlessly outsmarts human defenders. But that is entirely disconnected from what this report is actually saying.
Yes, the reality is much more mundane, which ironically makes it far more dangerous to the average organization.
How so?
The threat isn't a science fiction supervirus. It is extreme automation.
I want to make sure we really nail the mechanics of this. In the past, if we talked about hackers scanning the internet for vulnerabilities, we usually compared it to a metal detector.
Yeah, that's the standard analogy.
Right. Hackers used automated scripts to just walk the digital beach, sweeping back and forth endlessly, waiting for a beep that told them someone left a port open.
Right.
But you and I both know that traditional, non-AI automated scripts, things like Nmap, have been doing that for decades. That isn't new. So how does generative AI actually change this dynamic?
This raises an important question, and it is the exact distinction we need to make. Traditional tools like Nmap are just metal detectors. They find a potential target and they alert the human hacker. The human then has to sit down, analyze the specific system, figure out its unique configuration, and manually write or adapt a piece of exploit code to break in.
Right, it takes work.
Exactly. It takes time, expertise, and a lot of manual effort.
Okay, so if the old way is just the metal detector, what is the generative AI doing differently?
Generative AI upgrades that process exponentially. It's like having a metal detector that doesn't just beep when it finds a buried treasure chest, but it instantly analyzes the lock. And right there on the spot, 3D prints the exact customized key needed to open it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The AI isn't just scanning, it is dynamically writing the exploit payload on the fly to bypass specific localized defenses once it finds a vulnerability.
That is, so it completely removes the bottleneck of human labor.
Entirely.
In the past, a hacker might find 1,000 vulnerable firewalls, but only have the time and manpower to actively exploit 10 of them before the systems got patched.
Right.
Now, the AI can orchestrate the scanning of thousands of endpoints, instantly write custom scripts for each unique environment, and automatically execute the exploit to grab the data, all simultaneously while the human attacker is literally asleep.
Precisely. It is the complete automation of payload creation and execution.
That's terrifying.
And that ties directly back to the specific warning highlighted in the Kinsoft Digest. Never expose a firewall or appliance's admin interface to the open internet.
Yeah.
And operate under the assumption that attackers are using AI to find the ones that are. If a management interface is left even slightly exposed anywhere on the public internet, an AI-powered sweep won't just find it. It will exploit it before a human IT team even logs in for their morning coffee.
Which perfectly explains the sheer volume and variety of the attacks we just listed. It explains how a crew like ShinyHunters can hit a niche car marketplace to expose 12 million users and then immediately pivot to stealing internal employee data from a massive hospitality conglomerate like Wynn Resorts.
Exactly.
The scope or industry of the target just doesn't matter anymore. When the AI is doing the heavy lifting of dynamically exploiting vulnerabilities, it ceases to be a targeted operation. It is just a frictionless numbers game.
It lowers the barrier to entry for threat actors to near zero. They don't need to be elite coders to attack a complex system. They just need an AI model capable of interpreting the exposed interface and generating the right commands.
Wow.
And this is exactly why the Kinsoft Digest ends with that very direct, almost aggressive question aimed at IT administrators. Is our firewall management locked down?
Yep.
Because if you cannot answer that question instantly with absolute certainty, you're already behind.
That makes total sense.
The attackers have outsourced their reconnaissance and their weaponization to AI, meaning your window of time to patch a known vulnerability before it is discovered has effectively shrunk to zero.
It really puts this entire deep dive into a stark perspective. When you take a step back and look holistically at this single isolated week in March 2026, the contrast in how this technology permeates our world is just staggering.
It really is.
We started at the absolute pinnacle of global finance, looking at a technology fueled by $110 billion funding rounds, where the physical processing power, the compute, is so incredibly valuable that it has bypassed cash to become a literal currency among tech titans.
And then we followed that immense value and scale to its logical conclusion, which is federal intervention.
Right.
We saw how building infrastructure on that scale transforms the technology into a highly politicized geopolitical asset. The internal corporate ethics of a company regarding weapons and surveillance can trigger sudden federal blacklists, completely redefining what a supply chain risk looks like for any everyday business relying on those systems.
Right. The technology is so advanced and so powerful, it forces presidential administrations to step in and draw red lines.
Yes.
And then at the exact same moment, that exact same technological leap is being leveraged by ground-level cybercriminals.
It's a crazy juxtaposition.
It is. And not to launch sophisticated sci-fi cyber wars against intelligence agencies, but to quietly and ruthlessly automate the mundane process of finding weak management interfaces on firewalls, just to steal employee data and user credentials from car websites.
It is a profound realization for you as the listener trying to navigate this landscape. Whether you are actively managing an investment portfolio, whether you're a chief operating officer trying to secure a complex digital supply chain against sudden regulatory blacklists, or whether you are just an everyday consumer hoping your personal data on a retail marketplace is secure, these three pillars are now permanently intertwined.
Capital, politics, and mundane cybersecurity, all completely upended by the exact same tool at the exact same time.
Yep.
You cannot separate the $110 billion valuation from the geopolitical blacklisting. And you cannot separate the blacklisting from the AI-powered firewall breaches. They are all symptoms of the same massive, uncontrolled acceleration.
Which leaves us with a critical question to consider as we wrap up our analysis of this Kinsoft report.
Okay, let's hear it.
We've seen the sheer scale of the investment where compute dictates equity and billions are moved in a single round. We've seen the severe geopolitical and operational vulnerabilities that scale creates for businesses.
Right.
And we've seen how effortlessly this technology arms everyday threat actors to dynamically exploit mundane weaknesses at a global scale.
It is a lot to process, but it is exactly why we do these deep dives.
So the question you have to ask yourself as we look toward the future of this industry is this. If AI is simultaneously our most heavily funded foundational technology, a heavily politicized and highly regulated government asset, and a totally frictionless tool for everyday cybercriminals, well, how long until the financial liability of securing these massive systems inevitably outpaces the staggering profits of deploying them?